I want to talk about one of my favorite TV shows. There's a lot I could say about Attack on Titan or Shingeki no Kyojin. It's a show that has undergone such a transformation since the first episode that it's barely recognizable. A lot of people have already gone over that. So instead, I want to pinpoint one of the best things about this show, the music, and the episode where I think it's used the most effectively. I'll be going over some spoilers for the show, so take this as a warning. You should watch Attack on Titan if you haven't already because it's absolutely incredible. Now, when I say music and anime, most people think of the openings and endings, which is fair. Attack on Titan has some pretty great ones, Gurren no Yumiya being my favorite opening with Red Swan in a close second, and Yugure no Tori being my favorite ending hands down. It's off-kilter, macabre, and I just love it. But here, I want to talk about the soundtrack, composed by Hiroyuki Sawano. The music in this show is not subtle. At all. That's not a bad thing. For a show that's larger than life, it's appropriate that the soundtrack rises to match the bombast. Considering where we are now at the end of Season 3 and where the show is heading into Season 4, I wouldn't be all that surprised if the music became that much more insane. The soundtrack itself though, as over-the-top and dramatic as it is, can actually be quite clever. Something that stuck out to me from the start was how it managed to combine horns and choirs with electric guitars and synthesizers, a mixture of organic and synthetic sounds to really give the show its steampunk feel. A lot of other shows will mix these sounds too, just because it's neat, but here you can tell it's done with a purpose. One of the more clever moments is when the score ditches all the sounds we associate with the show altogether. In the end credits scene of episode 56, we hear what is essentially a cover of a song we're familiar with but in a style that's completely foreign. We get driving strings, wild classical guitars, and a sprinkling of jazzy piano chords, which are reminiscent of George Gershwin, an American composer from the early 20th century. It brings to mind images of a bustling city tinged in nostalgia, the only thing tying us to this new musical landscape being the melody itself, which is appropriate for a scene that depicts the memories of Grisha, a man who grew up in Marley, a different part of the same world. It's one of my favorite songs in the entire show. On a slightly related note, I love that the entire episode is filled with these flashbacks of Eren and Mikasa's childhood, something that doesn't happen in the manga, to remind you of how things used to be before the story completely upends everything you think you know, which is a pretty smart directorial choice. But at the end of the day, I see a score as a toolbox, with every instrument, note, melody at the composer's disposal as a tool to be used appropriately. There are times to use certain tools over others to get the desired effect, but there's one tool in a musician's toolbox that's the most important, but at the same time, delicate and fragile to wield. Finding a place for it is difficult but necessary, and I think Attack on Titan found the perfect moment to use that tool being silence is uncomfortable. It's uneasy, unnerving, but it can also be powerful. If filmmaking and cinema is a matter of what's in the frame and what's out, a composer's job is to know what sounds to use and when, even when that sound is no sound at all. Episode 55, Midnight Sun, depicts the aftermath of the Shiganshina battle in Season 3. It's the conclusion to what I consider to be a 3-episode arc. Episodes 53, 54, and 55. In my opinion, the best episodes of the entire show so far. It's not uncommon for a soundtrack to cut out for dramatic effect. I won't pretend Attack on Titan is the first show to do this. It isn't, and it won't be the last. But most of the time I see silence used like this is for action scenes, where the only thing you hear is the sound of the fight. And there, it can be really effective. However, the sounds in a fight itself can be a rhythm, a type of music in its own way, which can dictate the pace of a scene. It's pretty rare to find an extended scene of mostly dialogue played in this way, let alone an entire episode that has little to no action at all, which is exactly what happens in episode 55. The effect this has is that the entire episode feels completely intimate, which is a huge contrast from the 2 episodes that precede it. The only semblance of music we get in 95% of the episode acts as a bridge to carry you through a commercial break. Even then, most people don't even notice it. It would have been easy to add something, anything to this episode. There are a lot of ways to add suspense through music, the most common way being dissonance, the sound of 2 notes out of tune with each other, as if in conflict. In that way, it seems like it would make sense to use that technique to underscore this episode, which is all about conflict, a choice. But that would put a layer between you and the characters, as if the music separates what you experience and what they do. More importantly, the choice to use silence highlights the root cause of this conflict, which is built entirely on uncertainty. I think Sawano and directors Hiroyuki Tanaka and Shintaro Itoga knew that. The choice the characters have to make in this episode is one of the hardest they'll ever face. Who will you save? Who will you let die? Erwin or Armin? No one knows what's truly right or wrong. Nothing in this episode gives power to one side over the other. It makes sense that the best way for us to experience that choice, and all the emotions associated with it, is to have the moment play out for us, like how it does for them. But for this to work, all the other aspects of the production need to be completely established. Without music, the only thing to set the pace is the editing, the length of a shot, the visual rhythm of the cuts, and the acting, the delivery and performance of the dialogue. It's easy to run the risk of making the episode feel completely directionless and without momentum. In this episode, we live with these characters. It's as if we're holding our breath as we watch everything play out in almost real time. A balancing act that's not easy to pull off. It's a partnership between director, editor, and composer to understand what kind of emotion you want to establish, and the confidence to execute on it. After around 19 minutes and 25 seconds of almost complete silence, sitting, waiting for anything to steady the unease, we get our resolution. The music builds, layering strings, then piano, then horns. The music moves away from unease to anticipation as we wait to see who Levi chose, building to the finale. And by waiting until the very end, the last possible moment, using silence as a juxtaposition, the show is able to highlight the magnitude of the final scene. Up until this point, we've experienced everything that's happened in exactly the same way the characters have. Through the structure of the episode and the use of the soundtrack in this way, each moment feels intimate. We empathize with all of them. Just so that when the choir enters and Armin is revealed, we can experience the same pain and triumph that they do. All of that only being possible through the incredible acting, directing, editing, and Attack on Titan's perfect musical choice.